Patiently waiting for us to get all that out is the fire chief of West Bloomfield Township, Greg Flynn. Chief Flynn, thank you for joining us on the broadcast today. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you and Tyler? Doing great.
We are. I know it's a very busy time for you. We'll check in with you in a minute. I want to see if we can see Mike Morin, the Bloomfield Township Fire Chief, and make sure his Zoom is working. Chief Morin, thank you very much for joining us on the Megacast as well. Good to have you with us. Okay, we can't quite hear you, but are you there, and can you hear us, sir? He's still hitting a couple of buttons.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. It's so easy to get muted a little bit, though. How you doing? How you doing, Chief?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for joining us. We are so happy to now be covering a wider service area and to have you involved with us. And, Chief Flynn and I have been talking virtually every day over the past week or so, so really good to get your perspective and see how things are going in Bloomfield Township. And Chief Flynn told me when we talked on the phone over the weekend that Oakland County has put your department, the West Bloomfield department, and other departments into kind of a regional effort. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We're working with a divisional type command. They split the county up into 5 different divisions, and we're working together to try to have concentrations of support where it's needed. As this thing shifts in the demand on the system, we want to be prepared so we can move both fire and EMS resources to where they're needed the most. So that's just kind of getting built out. Just started this last week, and a lot of communication has to happen to make that happen. Due to the fact that we're on different radio dispatchers and operate a little bit differently. So we're working hard at it, but I think it's something that's going to be good for the whole community.
Well, it will, and I assume that you always have, in the case of a big incident, a very large fire, or some major incident that happens in particular near the borders of the communities that you and the other neighboring departments have worked together in the past.
Yeah, we have. We basically got handshake agreements between everybody around us. I think that's how fire and EMS work. We have legal documents that say we can work together, but for the most part, if somebody calls any one of our departments, we're there to assist them. So whether it be for fire needs or EMS needs, just stand by for coverage to help their community get back on their feet. That's kind of what we work with.
Chief Flynn in West Bloomfield, switching back over to you now. Last time we talked, you gave us a very realistic and sobering information about where we are at in West Bloomfield. You said, I think I got the quote here, that the coronavirus is definitely here now. Just give us an update on where you think we are on this Monday as we continue to watch on TV these numbers doubling and tripling.
So we're probably best way to describe it is holding where we are, and I don't think that there's been a huge change since the update that I provided last week. Just here this morning, I think every call that I've heard go out has had a positive screen for COVID-19. Unfortunately, some of those, 2 of those calls this morning were very critical, where the patient was experiencing severe symptoms. So we are still in the thick of this. Remember, as we've described disease transmission, and when we talk about mitigating that and influencing the impact of disease transmission, that it's going to take time. And so a lot of the testing that we're getting right now was testing from 5 to 7 days ago, when we were just implementing some of these measures that the governor put into play. So we're not going to really see the fruit of that, again, probably until the end of this week. So all of these folks that we're seeing come up positive are people that were already exposed and are now becoming symptomatic. Remember, the day we're exposed isn't the day that we get sick. So it takes a few days for things to go in, and then the symptoms can get worse as time goes on.
Yeah, we're seeing things like the auto show being canceled, major facilities like TCF in downtown Detroit being, transferred and made into a hospital. We see these reports in the news, and clearly we are right in the middle of it, and we have not yet flattened the curve, Chief Flynn.
Well, Dave, one of the things that it's so great about the local perspective on this is, I'll take my oldest son, Kellen. He's a senior this year, and what his senior year looks like is very different than probably all of that his brothers will have or that his cousins have had. So that's the reality of our West Bloomfield and Bloomfield Township schools and everybody that's within the listening of the broadcast today. There's impacts greater than the auto show when you're a senior in high school and you may not have an open house, or you have to virtually graduate. What's that going to look like for some of those folks? And that brings me back to the conversation you had with a counselor last week. What is the impact of that? And that's something we need to continue the conversation while Chief Morin and I are preparing plans for the day-to-day operations within our communities and the emergency preparedness. There are folks like the principal that you had on last week from West Bloomfield High School and others that are taking on those challenges, which I think Chief Morin and I will stay in our expert kind of world here, because the complexity of what our kids within our communities are going through and what folks that are furloughed from work because of the shutdowns that are taking place, the impact now, right? We're seeing how wide this goes. We're not just talking about disease transmission. We're talking about our lives and the impact this virus is having on those.
All right. Well, you could tell Chief Morin, because we've known each other for a while, and I'm just getting to know him, that I might throw a curveball at you guys every once in a while in the effort of getting information out to the community. So I know you guys know a lot more than I know. So what I'm going to ask, Chief Flynn, could you ask Chief Morin a question that you think might be helpful for people to know? And Chief Morin, if you would do the same for Chief Flynn. Chief Flynn, let's start with you.
Okay, well, I would say one of the things that I would have a question about is what are the number of COVID positive patients that are coming from COVID positive screened patients for the 911 center in Bloomfield Township? Are you seeing most of those coming out of extended care facilities, which include our independent assisted and nursing home facilities, or are you seeing them come from private homes?
I think right now it's a balance between the two. We have a lot of people in the community that are affected by this. They're stay at home right now. And then we have a couple incidents that are coming out of our extended care facilities, that we're dealing with. I think a lot of this is like watching that snowstorm being forecasted, that there's 6 to 12 inches coming and you're preparing for it. And we've been watching that for a while, and I think it's just starting to snow here. So we're looking at it from this is going to be a long-term event. I think we're just getting flurries at this time, I guess is how I would put it, or the incipient stage of the fire in the fire service. But we're seeing a little bit of balance of both. I think what we've seen the most of, I think most communities can say, is the runs we normally have, luckily, have gone down. The traffic accidents and things of that nature have helped us balance it out. So that's certainly helped by having people stay at home, and will help us in keeping resources manageable as this thing builds.
All right, Chief Moore, now the spotlight's on you. Do you have a question for Chief Flynn?
I would ask Chief Flynn, what is his community, or what is he seen as the president of Oakway in regards to mental health or the health of the first responders, and what direction does he see that going?
Right. So thanks for that question, Chief. This is way harder than Dave's questions, first of all. The emotional health component is, it's actually something that Dave and I have touched on a little bit, and I appreciate you bringing it up even more, because I know you're an advocate as well in the Yellow Rose campaign and taking care of our providers. I am very concerned. We've reached out to our chaplain to re-engage. Well, I shouldn't say re-engage, to find other ways to engage. It's been so easy to have the chaplain to stop by a fire station and check in on folks. Well, we can't do that. Our peer support teams would normally come into an engine house and sit with a group and ask them how they're doing and how they're feeling and how they're coping, and that's not an option for us. So we're definitely are rethinking the approach on emotional health issues in the fire service across our public safety, police, and EMS as well. And how do we engage with that? We know it's taking a toll. They're working long hours. We're seeing our attendance better than ever. The firefighters are showing up to work because they know that their community needs them and they're here. And then they have the added stress of what they take home, and not just what they saw that day, but physically what can be on them, on their clothes, and the fear of, especially those with loved ones at home that are immunocompromised or have grandparents that take care of their kids on their days that they're working, and then they go home and potentially expose someone. While low, it's still an exposure. So you're right, Chief, that is a challenge for us. I think it's going to take a village to address that. But some of the things that we've got working on hopefully will make the play here. And Dave, this is, as Chief Morin talks about that storm, this isn't a play for just the next day or two. This is weeks and potentially months. So even the problems or challenges that we're facing today may not be the problems and challenges that we're facing in a week or 3 or 2 months.
Well said, and I've been thinking about that a lot. It was so hard personally to isolate myself over the weekend, and I know everyone else is going through that. We're all starting to get cabin fever, and it's going to be spring. It's starting to warm up, and normally this time of year, I'm just thinking we're going to baseball games and getting out in the park and doing more of those kind of things, and we're doing a lot less of that now. And the forecasts that we see in the news are ominous, and it looks like it's going to be going on for a while. So with that in mind, I'm going to send it back to both of you. Greg, Flynn, we'll start with you in West Bloomfield. Is there going, I hate to ask this, but is there going to be a breaking point? We see the hospitals, if the news accounts are right, they're having difficulty with supplies. They're triaging people in the parking lot, which is, these things are smart. That's smart. But the challenge is, are we going to get to a breaking point for our first responders? We won't have the people, the equipment, the ability to respond. And as Pat Watson said a couple of minutes ago, and I'll finally get to a question here, but as Pat Watson said a couple of minutes ago, you can't have like a dream. You've got to have a plan. So I know you guys are working on contingency. Where are we at, and what do you see for challenges going forward? We'll start with you, Greg.
So Chief Morin did a nice job of putting this into context with the divisions that the county fire service, all the fire departments across the county are working on to address if that breaking point starts to show. I am confident, and there's a difference between confidence and being cocky, so I am confident that we are going to be able to manage what comes our way. Again, because of the speed of the snowstorm and the rate of which it's falling and accumulating, right now the capacity is there to handle it from the EMS side. If there's a department that we work closest with on a daily basis, it's our brothers and sisters in Bloomfield Township. The concern, Dave, comes in, and I have an 11 o'clock call where we'll be discussing capacities at the hospital. So it's one thing to have enough ambulances and be showing up with patients. It's another thing for the hospital to be able to receive those patients. And because the treatment for those, that 20% that we know that's going to get hospitalized, 80% is going to do well at home, 20% are going to get hospitalized. And of that 20%, we know that there's a percentage that are really going to be cared for on a ventilator and extended stay, right? So that all starts to stack up. That's probably going to be the choking point or breaking point that you're speaking of. And there's things in the works to try to, plans that are being developed, actually are developed. It's just really how do we implement now that surge capacity that we can build into the county hospital system. And then that plays into Chief Morin and I's calculations. Now, instead of transporting a patient to Bloomfield Township or to St. Joe's in Pontiac, now I might be transporting a patient to an alternative hospital site. Think big. Think where there's big open spaces where they can set this up, like a big arena or a big conference center. Now we're going to be moving patients to those areas that will be makeshift hospitals, which will be longer out of service time for our ambulances and just, a little bit more stress on the system. I know a long answer there.
Good answer. To the extent that either of you can answer, Chief Morin, I'll send it to you, but maybe Greg, Flynn, you know the answer to this one. Is there any consideration, thoughts, efforts, discussion about maybe Chief Morin having something a little closer? They're building out TCF downtown. Is that going to serve the region, or do we need something here in Oakland County as well?
Well, I think there's plans in place to put those facilities around the county. They'll build them out as the demand helps. I think the important thing on this whole issue is that to keep peace of mind with our employees and the public is that we have a plan. So we've blown through plans A and B so far. As administrators, we're working on plans C, D, E, and F, and our employees are kind of morphing into that plan C. So as long as they see that there is a plan in place and we're staying ahead and on task with that plan, you're going to provide a lot of support to the people that got to deliver that plan. So that's kind of our job as administrators. We again, this is going to ramp up, and we will ramp up accordingly. The county has certainly worked with us on protocols, and I've seen protocols I thought I would never see in my life being pushed out in 1-2 days to help us handle the impact of this on the system.
Well, Chief Morin, thank you very much. This is so helpful. I hope you guys realize, I know you do, but it is so helpful for us to be able to chat with both of you. I know you're both on the front line. It's very reassuring to the community that you're both honest and truthful and realistic, and that you both have plans. And, boy, I see a couple of guys on our team here in Oakland County that I'm really happy that we got the quarterbacks that we have, and you two fire chiefs to get us through. I'm confident. But thank you for Chief Morin for being with us today and being so straightforward and honest. And Flynn, you and I have been doing this for a couple of weeks. I know you've had the most honest comments of anyone on this show, and I appreciate it. So before we go, guys, I know you got to get on the call. Greg, Chief Flynn, do you have anything you want to add today? Any tips, thoughts for the community?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. First of all, it's always good to see Chief Morin, and I appreciate him taking time and him joining into the Megacast here. I want to send a sincere thank you to the community. We've asked, they've responded. The number of surgical masks from dentist offices that are closed that they've donated to first responders, N95 masks that people have donated. The Township attorney stopped by the station the other day and had some masks that were still in the case that he had in his garage for doing some projects that were P100. So the community is stepping into the help circle, and we're grateful for that. And I want people to know too, just because you're not donating something, if you're staying home, if you're washing your hands, if you're maintaining the social distance when you're at Costco or at the Kroger and you're paying attention to the blue square that says stand here and you're being respectful, you're doing your part. And that helps with infectious disease control. And that is what we need right now. Everybody doing that. Dave, we're moving in to week 2 of this roughly, and we're only halfway. And if we stop or change our trajectory now, this whole week that we've given up, this whole week that we've made those tough choices, it's for nothing. If we start putting sick people and large groups of people back out there together, we've done these past few days for nothing. So stay vigilant. It sounds like we're beating that same drum over and over again because we are. And that's exactly what we need people doing. And it's because of this message that keeps getting out there and these kind of updates that I hope will encourage people to remain firm in their stance about the fight against COVID-19.
We take it very seriously. Chief Morin, your thoughts?
Oh, I couldn't have said it any better. I think that, staying vigilant with this, I know sometimes we can justify our little trips to here and there in our own head. But remember, you're trying to protect, your grandparents, parents, and other people as well, not just yourself. So look broader than yourself on this. Talk to other people by Facebook, and we will get through this.
All right, Chiefs. Thank you. Big virtual high five to both of you guys. That was absolutely beautiful. I appreciate you taking time, and we will keep in touch. I know you're both busy. We really appreciate you taking almost a half an hour for us today. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Chief Morin, great. Thank you. Good to meet you. Look forward to meeting you in person.
You too.
Chief Flynn, thank you very much. And Godspeed to both of you guys. And listen, the whole community totally has your back. We really appreciate you guys just putting your lives on the line and all the people that work with you. Our first responders here are amazing. Thank you very much. And we'll, I'm sure, be talking again very soon. from their offices in West Bloomfield and Bloomfield Township. There are our incredibly capable, skilled fire chiefs with us, Tyler Keefe. And, you know, I always feel better when we talk to them because we get the straight poop, if you will, and even if it's not the best news, we know what's going on, and that's very reassuring for at least one broadcast.